Good morning. This is Ben with I'm Not Licensed because my name is Ben and I'm not a licensed therapist in any way, shape, or form. I just happen to have a strong opinion on life and an opinion about every fucking thing. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it gets me in trouble, sometimes it doesn't. But, anyways, today I'd like to talk about friends and repression, right? A couple topics that have kind of struck a chord lately. The repression thing, I think the repression thing gets visited quite a bit, especially from men. And mostly because I think us as men, we tend to kind of step on our dicks um, more often than not, right? What do? We open our mouth, we tell somebody what's on our mind, and all of a sudden it's like you're an asshole because you just told me what you think. Which, I mean, is just an opinion, but ultimately it's you told me what I think and I disagree with it, therefore I'm the victim and you're an asshole. Okay, fair enough. Hence why I get myself in trouble quite a bit for my opinion on just about everything. Because I don't really care. Because if you don't express your opinion, what do? You take it and you take one of those mason jars, you speak into it, you put the lid on it, you twist it up, and then you stick it on the shelf. And I call it the basement of repression because that's all of my repressed opinions and feelings and whatnot. Because again, us as men, what do? We repress our feelings, we repress our opinions, we repress our responses, we repress everything that we want and need as human beings. For what? To spare others, right? We don't tell our spouses and significant others that they look fat, that the dress that they have on looks bad, it doesn't fit right. We don't tell our partners and whatnot that we don't like our partner's friends and stuff because we don't want to argue with them, we don't want to fight with them, right? We don't tell our partners about the fact that their kids are this or their kids are that when you're in like a step situation or whatever. We don't tell people around us our actual opinions because maybe we don't want to hurt their feelings, maybe we just don't even feel like they're worth our time or our effort to be able to justify giving that opinion to that person, right? Because sometimes, I mean, let's face it, right? You can give your opinion to somebody and somebody just doesn't give a shit. Perfect example, my girlfriend, she could care less. I could tell her my opinion on everything that I see on a regular basis, and especially if it's things that she holds dear, with her kids and her job. Um, and she could literally, it would be like water off of a duck's back. It would just roll right off of her back, and she'd just be like, "Whatever, I don't really give a fuck. Like, it's your opinion." And it's like, damn. So sometimes it's not even worth saying anything, right? And so lately, I have tried to kind of like take a back seat with the whole opinions versus repressed feelings because it doesn't really seem to really be getting me anywhere. And when I say getting me anywhere, I mean like when it comes to getting you somewhere, which is like a happy place, right? A happy medium. You know, when you're trying to get to that happy medium space where you feel like you're being heard, but you're not like overpowering the situation, relationship, conversation, whatever the case is, right? You're not overpowering it, you're just being a part of it, right? So, but you're also being heard, which is like the big key. That's all anybody wants, men or women. We just want to be heard. We want our feelings and our opinions to not even necessarily matter, just be heard and even maybe just processed and say, for somebody to just say, well, your opinion doesn't mean shit to me, or like, I could care less what you think, whatever the case, right? But at least it lets you know that you're being heard. And so, we repress ourselves, we repress our feelings, and then what happens is we have this basement, right? And down there, it's dark, it's dangerous, and there's a whole bunch of just bottled up repression, opinions, feelings, experiences, and whatnot. And it's just a huge powder keg, right? So when you go down into this basement and you pull on the lights, like a horror movie, right? You pull the light switch and then the light bulb lights up, and then all you see is just jars everywhere. Jars everywhere. And all they are is their feelings, their experiences, their opinions. They're all of your repressed feelings and all your repressed words that you either chose not to speak or you did and it didn't really go anywhere. They weren't taken serious. They weren't listened to, whatever the case was. And so you just figure, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to put it in this jar. I'm going to tighten down the lid and I'm going to stick it on a shelf. And then who cares, right? And then what will happen is you end up leaving your current partner, your job, your friends, or whatever the case. And then you end up going and you get another job, new friends, or a new partner, or whatever. And then you start going down there periodically to those jars and you like open them up and then you like let them out, right? And then that other person that you're sharing those experiences with, opinions, or feelings with, they're either going to take them one direction or the other. And then you're going to be able to you're going to be able to figure out like where you stand with that person. Like, what is it that person means to you? Do they listen? Are they engaging? Are they just, not interested in listening whatsoever? And you're going to be able to I keep wanting to use the term justify, which is, it doesn't work. That's not the word I'm looking for. You're going to be able to evaluate what it is that person either is or means to you at that point, because they're either going to listen or they're not. They're either going to take into consideration what you're saying or they're not. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be about an opinion about their kids, their dog, their house, their car, their job, their personal hygiene, or anything of that nature, right? It could just be an opinion on life in general, right? Again, I hate people that park in the fire lanes, people park in handicap spots. I hate just people that just take advantage of society because they're just fucking lazy, or they're ignorant, or they feel entitled, or whatever those reasons are. But like some people can walk by a car parked in a fire lane with their hazard lights on while they're going to the ATM to get money because they're too fucking lazy to walk 50 feet from a parking space. And some people can just walk right by that car and that person getting out of the car and going to the ATM and just, it doesn't even faze them. It doesn't bother them. I'm not that guy. I haven't been that guy for a long time. I feel like we should all do better as human beings to make our world a better place and a much more enjoyable place to live. And, we shouldn't have to worry about repercussions from ignorant people. Perfect example. I was walking to Publix one day. Lady pulls up. She's in her Durango. Turns on her hazard lights. She's clearly marked in a fire lane, no parking. What does she do? She wants to walk her fat ass to the ATM so that she can go get money. So what do I say as I walk by? I said, oh, hey, the fire department's got some pretty good looking vehicles nowadays, huh? And she looks at me like with this weird look, like, what? And I said, the Durango. And she goes, oh, yeah, thanks. And I just kept on walking at that point. Now, whether or not that person processed what I said or not, whether that person it even made a difference. If the fact that you're already doing it as an adult, you're probably going to do it until the day you die. So you're obviously, that's just who you think you are and who you are as a human being. But like, I just don't have it in me, right? Because I've spent so many years of my life either speaking up or not speaking up. And sometimes when I was drinking, I wouldn't speak up, so therefore it would go right into the mason jar, twist the lid on, stick it on the shelf. And then what would happen? anybody that's ever drank alcohol that was an alcoholic like me knows what happens. You go downstairs and you just start wiping the shelves with all of those jars of repression, and they all start crashing down to the floor, and then you've got opinions and experiences, and you've got feelings and all these things that happen, and it all comes out, in a fiery mess because you're drunk. Not a good look. It doesn't come out in a controlled environment. It doesn't come out in a conversation. It doesn't come out with a subjective conversation. No, it's a fiery fucking mess because you're drunk. Not good. So as I have quit drinking and I start to do more and more of this whole like less aggressive, less abrasive approach, I think to myself, I said, let's try this a little bit differently, right? You get more out of people with sugar than you do with salt. You know, all the analogies that you want to use and whatever. But then you realize that, you know, it doesn't really truly make a difference. It really doesn't. Whether your delivery is good or bad, it doesn't make a fucking difference. Because the people that are on the other side, the receiving end of that opinion, that other side of that, you know, that advice, if you will, or the other side of your conversation, if they're not receiving the information and doing something with it that's constructive in your opinion, then your opinion doesn't mean jack shit to begin with, right? Case in point, you know, if you have to tell your kids to take out the trash that's in their own bathroom that they fill, that every time they throw something in, they see that there's trash in there, then that means that nothing that you have said up until that point has gotten through. So what do you do at that point? Do you just repress it and you just say, fuck it, you know what? You're going to be a failure your entire life. Good luck. I hope you fall on your face when you go out of the house. Yeah. So the last couple of days, I really have been a lot less opinionated. I've been a lot quieter. I've had a lot less to say about just the dumb shit that I see, because I don't fucking understand why it is that people just are the way that they are. Maybe I should have gone to school and gotten myself some sort of like a clinical degree so that I could halfway understand what it is that people think. Like, why, you know, I can't wrap my head around it. You know, why is it that, you know, a bar in the house becomes a catch-all? Well, that's because the person that runs the bar doesn't speak up and make the people the patrons, if you will. And obviously I'm just using, you know, analogies, if you will. But if the bartender, the barkeep, doesn't tell the patrons, hey, listen, that shit doesn't go here, it goes somewhere else, then obviously the patrons are going to do exactly what they want to do. And so what do? You just speak it into a mason jar and close the lid, because you realize it's not going to make a difference. You know, like my therapist friend has always said, you know, you have to choose the hill that you're willing to die on. And I'm not willing to die on a bunch of hills. I really am not. You know, some days you just think to yourself, what the fuck am I even doing here? And other days you're just like, oh, seems like it's getting through. And other days, you know, you sit back and you look at your own life and you say, man, you know what? I could probably pull out some of those jars of repression and open them up to myself, which I do on a regular basis. I mean, I am like my worst critic. I am my own worst critic, my own worst enemy. You know, this right here is probably the deepest, darkest, dankest place that you could ever imagine. And I always tell people, like, you know, it's a dark place. I don't advise going in there alone. Take a chaperone with you, because what you're going to find in there most of the time is just not healthy. So it's a good thing that I do have a therapist friend, that she's okay with me, you know, kind of offloading all of my shit on her and thankfully, you know, she feels like she can do the same. And we have kind of like a tit for tat relationship where I can give some of my life to her. She gives some of her life to me. And whether or not it makes any difference to either of us, or whether or not it helps our lives in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't make a difference. What does make a difference is the ability to be able to speak up unjudged and just either listen and participate, just listen, participate, listen, participate, and offer advice. Like, you know, because like a conversation is great. It sucks if it's just one direction. If you're just talking to somebody, then it's not a conversation. It's a one-sided conversation. There's nothing that's going to come of it other than you just getting out what you want to get out. Well, that's not a conversation. Because if that's the case, you could just talk to yourself. Because if the person isn't willing to engage in a conversation with you, then you're basically having a conversation with yourself anyways. Because if you are sitting there talking to them and they're not engaging, you are just talking to yourself. Because by them not engaging, it is a clear cut to me that they have absolutely no interest in listening to what you have to say, participating in the conversation, and offering any advice, solution, compromise, conversation, anything. Like nothing. So again, where does it go? Right into the jar of repression, put it on the shelf, right? So it's very unfortunate because the high rate of suicide for men is in the high 70%, right? And it's in the 70% because we have those basements full of those mason jars of a repression, because nobody gives a fuck about a guy and his fucking, like, what does everybody say? Man up, man up, man up, man up, man up. Okay, what exactly does that term mean? What does it mean? What does it really mean? What does it mean to you? Because to me, it means something completely different. Maybe it means the same thing as it does to you. I don't know. You would have to comment on it yourself and, you know, maybe start a dialogue on it, because I don't know. What does man up really mean? Does it mean like you're going to be the one that's going to rush into a burning house when there's a fire? You're going to be the one to, you know, break up a dog fight if you're walking down the street and you see one? Like, you're going to be the one that is able to rise to the occasion if the occasion should ever come? Or does it mean something completely different? Does it mean like you're just supposed to take charge of the household? I'm just supposed to be the alpha male, and I'm the alpha. Like, oh my God, all the fucking terms that we've come up with these days. Now everything is an alpha, a beta, a liberal, right wing, left wing, Democrat, Republican. Everything is a fucking title, right? But what do they even mean? What do the sayings mean? Again, what does man up really mean? Does it mean like you could go to a rodeo and just say, oh, fuck it, I'll hop on the back of a bull. Even if I get tossed off, it doesn't matter. I'll still just man up and do it, and we'll see what happens. Like, what does it mean? What does that term mean to anybody? Because there's no term that says woman up, right? There's no term that says kid up. So there's only a term that says man up. Well, why? What is it? What does it mean? I have no fucking idea. Does it mean that you're going to be the one that when you hear gunfire, you're going to rush towards the gunfire? And you're going to address the threat should there be one? I don't know. I have no idea. No idea. But it is very ironic that there is a man up one. And when do people always use that term? When what? When somebody's what? Level of manhood or aggression or their level of testosterone is questioned, and then it's a man up thing. Oh, you need to man up. Oh, when you start breaking out your feelings and like actually starting to be a human being, then you're like, oh, okay, well, man up. Then, you know, what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm supposed to be something that I'm not. How am I supposed to rise to an occasion when I don't know what the occasion is? You know, why is it okay for you to express your feelings? It's not okay for me to express mine. Oh, because of a penis? Okay, well, I didn't get the owner's manual when I was born. I haven't gotten an owner's manual yet, and I'm almost 50 years old. I haven't found one either. So I have no idea what the fuck it means. So that's my opinion on the whole repressed thing. And we're going to briefly just touch on you know, the friend thing, because I'll tell you what, we're at about 20 minutes. I'm going to try to hammer this out in about 10, because I like to keep all my videos within about a half an hour. Because I know that I've watched some half an hour videos on YouTube. Sometimes they're fucking dry as shit, and I just can't handle it. And I'm just like, let's try to get to some meat. But I'm gonna use this one, right? So as I've said before, I'm a commercial diver, and I've got friends that are in the commercial fishing, and I do have one particular friend. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's a garbage truck. Anyways, he's a commercial fisherman, and he always calls me last minute. Hey, I'm gonna go fishing. Can I get your diver out so that they can come clean my boat? And like me. He never calls me and says, "Hey, I'm at the dock and I got an extra grouper on board. You want some?" Or, "Hey, I caught this or I caught that. Do you want some?" No, I usually have to ask him what he caught and then if he's got any extra. And I don't do that very often, just because, like, I just don't. I mean, yeah, it's nice to have fresh fish and all. But anyways, so this most recent interaction was, calls me up, says, "Hey, I'm going to pull my boat out of the water. Going to have some work done. Get your diver over here and clean it up." No problem. Get the diver out, cleans up the boat. And then he calls me, says, "Hey, I didn't get my new propeller, but I'm going to get it this coming week. Can you come over and pop it off and then pop on the new one?" And I was like, "Well, why didn't they just leave your boat blocked for another day or two and then just do it while it was on the hard?" He says, "Oh, I had asked them that, and they said they already put it in the water." So in other words, they did their part, they did their work, and then they dropped the boat back in the water to get your boat out of the way and move it on, right? So then I'm like, okay, no problem. My comment was, I said, "Well, since you're not paying yard fees, it looks like now you're going to be paying diver fees." And I can hear it in his voice. "What? What do you mean? What are you going to charge me?" So I told him the rate, which is the normal rate. And I only did it one direction, because usually the rates are to take the propeller off and to put the propeller back on. Now, that's obvious. I mean, you don't go to an auto dealer, or you don't go to a mechanic and say, "Hey, I want you to change my oil." And they say, "Okay, well, that'll be $40 to empty it, and it'll be another $40 to fill it." No, it's one price, right? So I'm like, "This is what the rate's going to be." And he says, "What?" He's like, "You want to charge me how much to take this propeller off?" And I was like, "Yeah, because that's the going rate. That's what the rate is. You're not any different. You're a customer just as much as anybody else. We might be friends and all, but you're still a customer. And this service isn't free. You're not asking me to come over and help you move a couch from one bedroom to another, or from the living room to the bedroom, or to your car, or whatever. You're asking me to come over and do my job, which is what I get paid for, not for free." So, "Oh, man, oh," he's bitching and moaning. I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I'll bring you the tools, and I'll drop them off with you, and then you can do the work yourself." Fine. Go ahead. I got a hookah. I'll do it." "Okay, no problem." Now, I wouldn't normally do that for just any Joe Schmo, but since he's a friend of mine, I said, "You know what? I'll do that for you." Mostly because I knew he wasn't going to be able to do it. It's not an easy process. It's not like taking out the trash. It's a fucking process. So I was like, "I'll just drop the parts." So I drop off the tools, and we're talking and everything, and he's hemming and hawing. "I still can't believe you're gonna charge me." And I'm like, my thoughts are going right into that mason jar and putting the lid on it, right? Because the only thing I really want to do is tell him to figure it out himself, pay a diver full price, or to fuck off. Excuse me. Because he's pissing me off at this point. Because here we are, friends. You've already tried to say, oh, well, you don't want to pay a diver to do the job himself. You want someone to do it for free. And then now I'm giving you the tools and you're still bitching about it. Okay, cool, whatever. Day comes around, diver calls me up, and he says, hey, I'm in the area. You want me to go run by that boat and see how they're doing? I said, yeah, because I had already texted him and said, hey, don't bother going there. He told me he got somebody else because he had texted me that morning and was like, hey, where's your diver at? So I was like, he said he was going to be there. He'll be there. He's a diver. I have the utmost confidence in him and his abilities. He'll be there if he says he's going to be there, right? So then he texted me a little bit later on, or I texted him. I don't remember the exact interaction. But the response was, I got somebody else. And I'm like, you're fucking kidding me, right? No. So, of course, naturally, my response was, I hope they got their own tools. So I tell my diver, I'm like, hey, don't bother going over there. He already got somebody else. He says, well, I'm already in the area. I'll just stop by and make sure that everything's cool. And if they can't get it off, then I'll just pop it off for him. What do you normally charge? So this is what I was going to charge him. He says, okay, no problem. I'll just use that number. I said, okay, fine. So stops off. He says, dude, they are using your tools. I'm like, okay, now, Houston, we have a problem. Now I've got to go back down into the basement. I've got to find that bottle, that jar that's labeled you, and I've got to untwist the lid because now I'm very, very annoyed because you didn't want to pay for the service. Then I offered to bring you the tools because you told me you were going to do the work. And now you've got somebody else because we weren't doing it fast enough for you. And now you're letting them use my fucking tools to do the job because you're a fucking asshole. Okay, cool. I got it, bro. No problem. My diver says, hey, while I was there, he was actually asking me, the other diver was asking me because the plate wouldn't fit between the hub and the strut. Okay. Well, we have an option for that. We have another tool for that. We, in the industry, have tools for that shit, right? You don't go to the mechanic and say, hey, I need an oil change. And they say, oh, well, what kind of car do you have? Oh, I have this. Oh, well, I don't have an oil filter wrench for that one. Well, what the fuck you mean you don't have an oil filter wrench for that one? No, you have all the tools at your disposal or you don't. So he says, well, no, you're not going to pay me to do it. I'm not going to do it. Okay, good for you, man. I'm all for it. I support my guys because those guys support me 100%. If they tell me that they're not going to do the job, can't do the job, whatever the case is, like, I support that decision because I know that they're not a couple of assholes that just want to sit around and suck off the clock. Okay, cool. So what I did was I took all those feelings and I took all that opinion. And I spoke it into the mason jar and I twisted a lid on it and I stuck it on the shelf because I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to have this text conversation and this text argument with this guy because it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't have any impact. Having a text argument with somebody, there's zero impact because there's no tone, there's no facial expression, there's no nothing. It's just black and white. And you really, truly can't get your emotion out on a text message, no matter what emojis you use, because you can't do it outside of using the talking portion and where you're basically doing recorded audio, which doesn't work anyways because then it's just one-sided. So we're going to save that one for when I go down there to pick up those tools because I do believe that could potentially be the straw that breaks the camel's back because that is just blatantly taking advantage of your friends. What do you think? I mean, am I being petty about it? Like, you didn't want to pay for my service, so I offered you to use my tools so that you could do it yourself because you had a hard-on to do it, which you couldn't do it the last time by yourself because I still had to go do it when the boat was out of the water the last time. So what made you think you were going to do it this time? No, maybe, and this is just speculation, Maybe he had already had it in his mind. Okay, cool. Well, Ben's going to let me use his tools. So what I'll do is I'll call Joe Blow Diver over here, and I'll say, hey, man, can you pop this prop for me? You know, I'll give you $100 or a fucking case of beer or whatever the case was. And I already have the puller. I have all the tools and everything. And the other diver was like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. Because there are those whore people out there that'll just do anything for $1. Not me. I am not going to get in the water and work on a propeller for peanuts. I didn't get to the position that I'm in because of doing shit like that. I don't go out and undercut people on purpose just so I can get business. I just don't do it. I'm not going to go solicit docs because I don't need to do it. I've got a good enough reputation around me to where I don't have to do it. But to do your friends like that, we're actual friends. We've been golfing together. We've drank together. When I was drinking, we would hit balls off the dock. I mean, we would go places. I would go over to his house and do his personal boat at his house. I mean, it was like I have bent over backwards for this guy, and to do this type of treatment to me, and then his justification, because I already know how he is going to be, oh, well, what's the big deal? Right? What's the big deal? That's the world we live in. What's the big deal? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. For all you people out there that say, what's the big deal? Have one of your friends come over and fuck your girlfriend or your wife. But don't just do it when you're not home. Do it so when you get home from work, they're in the middle of it when you walk in the house. And then you tell me, what's the big deal? When you walk in and you see that happening, and you don't have an open relationship with your partner, you tell me, what's the big deal? There you go. And with that, I conclude my video for the day. So, like always, every other YouTube video, and like, comment, subscribe, share, and all that other bullshit, absolutely comment. I would love to read some comments on these couple videos, couple subjects. God, I can't even speak. Ugh. I would, and I mean, I'd go into more in depth on them in the future. Absolutely. But what's your opinion now? Let me know. Let's talk about it. I'm more than happy. Let's talk about it. And in the meantime, enjoy your day, and be sure to tell somebody you love them. This has been with I'm Not Licensed. Have a great day.